Okay, good evening, everybody. I hope everybody is well and had a wonderful, wonderful day. So, today I'm joined by the wonderful Rachael Kenny, my amazing, amazing mentor. So, yes, do you want to introduce yourself, Rachael?
Yeah, sure. So as Clem said, I'm Rachel. I am an event professional. I've been in the industry 4 years now, so not actually like too long. I started out by doing a master's at Bournemouth Uni, and in event management, and kind of progressed into the industry that way. Yeah, 4 years ago. I've worked in agency, and I've now moved into in-house corporate, where I've been full time like for the last few years. So yeah, wider range, and I just love everything about the events industry basically. So threw myself in from the start, networking, applying for every program or anything that I could. And then here I am, and I'm currently living in Poole, used to be in London. Obviously pandemic causes things to change, and I'm a mum to a cat. That's me.
Love it. Thank you very much, Rachel. Really looking forward to tonight. You've got some amazing experience and things to share with us. So, I'll crack on. So, first question: what made you join the events industry?
Um, So for me, it wasn't really like an obvious thing. I think I know a lot of people that were like, oh, it's always something that they wanted to do. But when I was in school, I didn't know it was a thing you could do. Like I didn't realize events was a job like at all, because it's just not mentioned. Like business and marketing and all that's mentioned, and I kind of thought I'd go down that route. But then I didn't. I actually did my degree in law originally, so nothing to do with events whatsoever. But for being like at uni and when I was in sixth form, I always used to volunteer for like student union stuff, like to help plan the events. Um, and at uni, I was part of the cheerleading squad, and so some of them did events, and I was always jealous that they got to do that as their degree, whereas I was just writing boring law papers and like nothing fun whatsoever, and they would get into put on events. So I did like the social sec for that, and then when I was in my first job role, I used to volunteer to like help do the sales incentives and the Christmas party and things like that. So there's all those little hints, but I still never realised at that point that I should do events, until I was. This sounds really cliche, but I was traveling in Australia, so it's like a find yourself kind of moment, and I knew I needed to come back to the UK and like do something. So I just researched online, and my mum had kind of said, oh, what about events? Because like you always do those kind of things. So I looked into it, and I was going to do a course maybe and try and get into it, like a college course, and then found out you can do taught masters. And I was moving to Bournemouth, which is where my mum was, and they did it at Bournemouth Uni. So that all fell into place. And you could get a postgraduate loan, because when I was at uni, you had to get to the bank to get a postgrad loan originally. You couldn't get a student one. So I was like, this just all makes sense. And I felt like it all kind of fell into place, and did that, and then ended up getting a job, which is perfect.
Amazing. Love that journey. And yeah, like you said about the student union, it's so good just to get involved with. You get involved with so much, don't you? Like so much. There's so much you can get involved with, from the Freshers Festival to you name it.
Yeah, well, I worked in the bar and then helped out doing like social sex stuff for like the sports teams. So yeah, I just love, there is so many opportunities you can do through student union.
Yeah, definitely. And you've briefly mentioned this, but where's your path taken you so far?
Oh God. I feel like it's been a short, but like I've packed a lot in to
Yes, you
my
have.
time in the industry so far. Um, which I think just highlights like there's no like set way. I feel like a lot of people tend to think that you have to work in a role for X amount of years before you're allowed to progress, and that's like not true at all. Like it's about what you can do as a person and how you fit the company to progress that way. So I started initially in agency, um, and at a venue whilst I did my masters. Um, so I worked for agency Go to Events down in Bournemouth, and worked for the Bournemouth International Centre, which I know I was really lucky to do. Like at that time, to get a paid job alongside studying. Like I realise now how like hard that actually is to find, and that gave me experience to kind of have that first step in. and then got a job at in-house corporate for a company called Investors in People, and moved to London when my master's finished. I started off there. I kind of just decided to be a sponge the first year in the industry. I was like, I'm going to just absorb anything and everything that is possible to me. So it was like starting to go to network events, which was so scary to start with, like going to your first networking event and having to be like not knowing people and walk in. Like, it's one of the scariest things you can do. But once you've done it once, you realize everyone there is there to meet other people. So it's such a good way to meet contacts, and it's been like so good for my career progression, I can't tell you. And then through working Investors in People, just asked to keep taking on as much responsibility as I could. So like I did one thing, prove myself, and I was like, okay, can I try this next? And I had a really supportive manager and company, so they were able to like give me more responsibility as I wanted it. And then I got on the Fast Forward 15 program as well. So I've been in the industry like 6 months then. So that was really good. It just kind of opening my eyes to more contacts and more people, and being to grow, like have a mentor, like narrow down your goals. Because when you first start, there's so many things you can do. There's so many different job roles in the events industry. Like it's so hard to navigate and work out where to start. So having a mentor definitely helped me like narrow down, fine tune that. Also helped me get a promotion within a year of working there. So that was just like amazing. I was like so proud to be able to get that. And I did like a whole business case and like negotiated a pay rise and everything by like, so that was like so good. It wasn't just a step, it was like I managed to do it for myself, which is another thing. You don't have to wait for a promotion or pay rise, you can make it happen on your own. And yes, I've done all of that. And I guess I've won some awards, and I've been on lots of like fam trips, and just like my network has just like expanded massively, even through the pandemic, and starting like a blog and social media stuff, just for fun, but also to help teach people that are coming into the industry things that I wish that someone had taught me. Like I've learned it myself, but I just feel like people need to share the knowledge, like learn the hacks, know what to do. So then it's just going to level up the industry overall. The more everyone knows.
Absolutely. That's so you like you said, you've packed in so much in the short time you've been in the industry, but you wouldn't think you've been in the industry just such a short time. You know, you feel like you've been in it for years and years and years, the amount of awards you've won and you know what you've been involved with. And I feel so lucky to have you as my mentor.
I mean, I probably missed out as well that I got made redundant and then got a new job during the pandemic as well. So been on quite the journey, ups and downs.
And what is your favourite part about working in corporate?
Um, I think it's like the fact that you work for one specific company, so you can really get like under the skin of like the strategy and the business, and be able to. I love creating events that will help the business in some way, like whether it's like marketing or business development. You can like plan more longer term of how the events impact like marketing campaigns if you're in marketing, um, and also like get involved in a wider variety of stuff. I've found anyway in the roles I've been in, like I've done the marketing campaigns for the events, worked out how the events fit in with the sales, and like picked up so much. And you work across such a normally wide variety of different departments. You get to know everyone in your company, and it's very much like can be more strategy roles, or you can work in operations. And also just the fact there is in corporate, there's so many different roles. Like every company and every role is different. There's not like a set thing that an event coordinator means this, because event coordinator in one company will do something completely different to event coordinator in another company. And I feel like corporate gets a bad rep as being like the boring event side, because agency looks so amazing and fun, but that's because they do events as their industry, and their websites are just full of that, so it looks more glamorous than it is. I think corporate is actually more glamorous than agency because of how much work goes into working in agencies. Like the hours can be crazy, and in corporate it is more like 9 to 5. It can be like generally you still work long hours, but you are like the buyer, as well. So you are hiring in the agencies to help you work on events. So you can still work on amazing events all around the world, but you get someone that's more specialized to support you on it, whereas you kind of think about the bigger idea and strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I say, you're working with the agency, so you're getting best of both worlds, aren't you?
Yeah.
And a typical day for you, Rach, what does it look like? Is there such thing as one?
um, yeah, I'd say there isn't really a typical day. My typical day currently looks very different to how it did pre-pandemic. One, obviously, I have a new job. Two, just because virtual events is very different. So I'd say currently is very much like computer, quite admin heavy, programming virtual events, which can all be done online on programs, running virtual events. When they come in, we do a mixture of like different types. So there is a variety of different programs and things to learn to use. But I'd say it's a lot more admin heavy than it was pre-pandemic. Pre-pandemic was, honestly, there was no set day. You'd be in the office for a bit, then you're out on site visits, you attending a networking event, you're running off to do a food tasting. Like there's so many different moving parts. I feel like this isn't a typical day, but doing in events, even it is admin predominantly, which people tend to like think, oh, you'll be out doing lots of stuff all the time. Like you are, but you have to be prepared to do a lot of the admin work as well, which is like doing the project management, making sure everyone's doing as they're told. But it is very varied on the day-to-day sense as well.
Absolutely. And what about key skills? So, is there any key skills that are required specifically for your role working in corporate?
In terms of key skills, as you touched on, like admin skills, obviously that was top one, because you'd be using like a lot of different programs and project management tools. So also being able to pick those up quite quickly, if you're able to pick up different programs quick, is important. Like the standard event ones, you know, like organisation, all of those, I feel like that's just more obvious. Definitely being a people person, or being able to at least like talk to different people in different seniority roles, and not get flustered necessarily, because they are all people too, and you're going to need to speak to people that are like CEOs, you're going to need to speak to suppliers, you're going to need to be able to speak to all these different people, and be able to just like have the big picture in your head while still working on the small details and making sure the attention to detail is there. Because with virtual events like those, like attention to details can make or break like the systems behind the scenes. And in person, you're dealing with all the stuff that goes on site. So I guess that leads into customer service as well, because it is heavily a people industry. Like you're providing a service for people and just providing like the best experience for them. So just having that as the front of your mind, that when you're planning every event, stepping through like in your head, it's like, okay, so what is the attendee's experience from when they're going to first receive the first email to when they're going to walk out the door, and what they're going to say about it after. Like I'll like think that through in my head when planning or designing an event.
Absolutely. And in terms of advice, what advice would you give to anyone that's wanting to work within the industry, for graduates or anyone that's wanting to enter the industry?
My first piece of advice is always network. I've been said time and time again, but like the people in the industry, and like who like your little black book, say, of your contacts, can really like can give you so many opportunities that you might not have known existed like without that. And then just do as much research as you can, because with corporate, because it's companies like, well, Facebook, Google, and all those, those, and they'll have an events department, but there's so many companies that have events departments that you wouldn't necessarily know about. And when I remember first looking at job roles, when I was doing masters, I was like, where do I start? How do I know what companies have an events department? It's really difficult for corporate and in-house, because you can't just search for a list of like event agencies in London, like it's not going to come up. So you have to do like thorough, deep research. But there are award things like the ICE Awards, ICE, they're like a corporate award thing. So you can see what companies have won awards in certain categories, and then you'll know they have an events department, because otherwise they wouldn't be up for an award. And then just searching the job sites is always difficult. But then if you have a network, you then learn like companies that way, and then they can help you get an in. The job I've got now, I got through my network. Like someone I know is head of events there. She shared the job role. I applied, and then I went through all the like interview steps. But because she referred me, like that helps you get into like it helps you beat the ATS system, like the applicant tracking system. So you actually get a human looking at your job roles instead of a computer just like filtering it out. So that's always important. And just attending events like this, industry events, and connect with people on LinkedIn and stuff like that. You connect with them, send you a message. Most people in the events industry are really welcoming, want to help each other out. So you send them a message, they'll probably send one back, and like help with specific questions.
Love that. And just got a couple more before we move on to the audience questions. So, what has been the most difficult part of your career so far?
COVID-19. That's a given. Yeah, that just, I mean, I don't think I've been doing my career wasn't that long. So I've been in my full-time role like a year and a half before the pandemic hit. And we had so many like good plans. We'd redesigned the whole event program. We just hired a new person that was like our assistant. So I had like people on the team to help me out. And it just all fell apart. Just like had to furlough, then got made redundant. So yeah, it just kind of like crumbled there. But rebuilding it as well, it's just like it felt like last year was a lot of like, you know, when you're paddling, like treading water constantly, but there's like waves coming at you and you're just trying to keep your head above. Like that's what it's felt like for the last like year. But now it's back on track. But it's just been such a tough year because I'll happily say I'm not a fan of virtual events. Like it's not why I got into the industry. I find them quite boring, if I'm completely honest. I'd rather be on site and dealing with just more the creative stuff to put things together, and I cannot wait for those to return. But yeah, it's just been a tough 12 months for the industry, and seeing people and businesses and people I know that like run agencies struggle. I think it's hard, but on the plus side, like the community spirit in the events industry has been like amazing. Like I've got to know so many more people. I think everyone will say that it is more like we're more together now than I feel like we ever were before, which is great.
Oh yeah, 100% agree with that. Absolutely. And just a last one before we go on to the audience one. In terms of career highlights, you've got a few. Go on, name the first one.
I think the most excited I've ever been in my career was when I got the phone call that I got onto Fast Forward 15. I was like in work and I was just like so excited because I'd wanted it for like over a year. I just didn't apply like 1 year and then like waited for it to come up, and I was just so excited about that. That was like, yeah, it was one of the most exciting moments I've had. And then also, I mean, yeah, I have got a few. Like running my first big award ceremony, so like an event which was like 700 people, and that I was fully in charge of, and like seeing all that come to life in front of me, that was amazing because I'd worked on that for like 9 months, and like led the project. So that was like the first big one. It's like, yeah, okay, I'm an event manager now. Like this is what I can do. And then recently, yeah, getting onto the CNIT A list in terms of awards was something that I like always wished that I'd got. Like I really wanted to go on that list, so being named on that was like mind blowing, especially with the people that are on the list that have been in the industry like 10 years, most of them. And I'm like, how am I here? I'm not sure.
And there was another one, wasn't there, Rach?
Oh, what awards?
Yeah, there's another couple.
There is another couple. Yeah, conference news 30 under 30. That was good too. And meeting Show Tomorrow's Talent.
There
I
you
feel like
go.
it's awkward how many I've won now.
And just moving on to, do feel free, guys, pop any more questions in the chat. We'll just go on to the first one. So, what is the most exciting thing about working in corporate? It's an area that I'd like to go into after my degree.
For me, the most exciting is like the fam trips and like being hosted by her and stuff at industry events, because working in corporate, as I said before, like you're the buyer, so you're hiring the agencies and suppliers in, like you're top of the chain. The spending power you can have means that lots of industry events like to treat you. So you can attend things for free, but they'll throw in like free lunches, free hotel stays, and like, yeah, you're like a hosted buyer, they look after you. They'll tend to wade through it and decide whether like you apply to do it, and they'll see whether it's okay. Like you can go to IMAX in Las Vegas as a hosted buyer. Like I've not done that, but it's on my bucket list. And yeah, the fam trips to hotels, I don't know what fam trip stands for. I think it's familiarization trip. So if you see people say fam, I forget that sometimes people wouldn't know what that means. It's basically a hotel or agency take a lot of event managers to experience what they could provide for your guests. And because you're normally doing events for like CEOs and like top level people, they will like pull out all the stops for you. So you get like private dining, hotel stays. So yeah, not part of the job, but the perks.
Love that. And what's, just out of interest, what's been the most exciting one that you've been to?
Ooh,
Are you going to?
one of my favourites is the first one I ever went on, with Event Profs Live being part of that. So they're like a networking group for corporate event professionals. So if you get into corporate events, definitely check them out to join them. And that is mainly London based, but they do some regional as well. And it was on the Belmond British Pullman. So it's the train. It's like a posh, really posh train, but like it's like 5-star dining while you're on a train, and like we went round Kent and back, and it's like the whole Walks Express because it's got like steam coming out, and I used to watch it go from Victoria from my office window. And I was just really excited that that was the first one I went on. Then also going to Manchester with Make Events on like a weekend trip, that was like amazing because they put on a really good van trip.
Love that. And got a question here about adapting to virtual events. How did you adapt to the virtual event environment? And have you worked on any, had you worked on any virtual events pre-pandemic?
So I kind of just ended up having to get thrown into it for Fast Forward 15. So we do an event at the end of every year for the mentees, and ours was meant to be in May 2020. So we were literally, everything was finalised, it was ready to go near enough. Pandemic hit. So we had 6 weeks to turn it virtual, and none of us had worked on virtual events before. I mean, I'd done like webinars on Zoom, but nothing, not a proper virtual event. So it was literally just like, just learn as I went. And to be fair, it was a very good learning experience to do it that way. And we worked with Spark, who are an agency, and they knew what to do, so they kind of like led us along. But it's very much trial and error, and every virtual event platform and system is different. So it's just learning as you go is the best thing. Do it, just like try different platforms, try and put things on. And then, because I was on furlough as well, so I wasn't being able to do it in my job role. So there's no other way to get experience but make it for myself. So I like helped volunteer with some agencies to put on like showcases for them and use platforms that way. And then using different platforms, trying them out by myself, and then putting on my CV to say I had the experience when I'd only just tried it out myself, but it worked.
Definitely. And when working in corporate events, do you think that you need a better understanding of financial based topics than, you know, that might fall under your area more?
It depends on the industry you're working with, because obviously with corporate you could be in any industry. Big hitters are like finance, law. You get a lot of, like, you're often aligned in those kind of areas. But I'd say you need finance in the sense for budget management, so being able to like cost a budget and like reconcile a budget. and like create them. But in terms of wider finance knowledge, I wouldn't necessarily mean it's like that important, because you often with corporate, well, you might have, depending on the company, you might have a content team that creates the content for events for you, and you just have to do the operational side. Or you might be creating the topics as well. Like I've done both in different roles. So yeah, it did very much varied. I wouldn't say I've got a strong finance knowledge, and I work for a company that puts on events for finance most of the time.
And just more of a general one, do you have any advice for approaching companies about graduate placements, or any sort of, next steps for when you do graduate?
For graduate placements, I think it's quite hard to find corporate, like in-house graduate placements. I don't know many companies actually that do it that way, unfortunately, or have those kind of opportunities. But I'd say in terms of reaching out and asking, I would definitely say utilize LinkedIn. When you search for a company on LinkedIn, you can find the company page, and you can go to people, and then there's a list of all the people that work for that company and what their job role are. So you can then find if there's an event manager or head of events or someone, because it would normally be like event director, head of events, director of marketing. They're the type of people that would be hiring senior event manager. And then connecting and reaching out, just asking the question. And even if they're not able to do graduate placement, they might be able to hire you once you've left uni and you're able to look for a job that way. And then, yeah, LinkedIn is definitely a platform that a lot of them use to advertise jobs, but also Glassdoor. And is there another one? I'm not really so keen on Indeed. I feel like sometimes they're advertised on there, but I don't know, I just find the job adverts a bit funny on that personally. It just seems like a bit strange when you put things in and what you get out of it. And there's a lot. So definitely that way. And then reaching out again, networking, finding people that work for companies that can help suggest them. And yeah, if you can get an email address, not like an info one, if you know an actual person one, like connect on LinkedIn, get an email, or people, send them an email, send your CV, like be proactive in it rather than reactive in applying for a job role. Try and create a role for yourself. You never know.
Yeah, you never know. And what you mentioned about the LinkedIn, when you type in the company and click on people, that's a really good tool. I didn't even know existed until I think it was you that mentioned it to me. Really good way to look at, the interviewer who was interviewing you, and look at their past and, their career history, isn't it?
Yeah, and also if there's a company that you think that you really want to work for, start trying to like connect with the people that work there already, because they'll often then share job roles, and then when it's shared, if you're already connected, you can then like reach out and be like, would you mind recommending me for it? I'll send you over my CV, or let's have a chat. But definitely not just like cold adding people on LinkedIn, like send them a message about why you want to add them in the first place.
Definitely. And have you got any advice for those who have a gap in paid employment in the industry to fill that gap?
A gap in paid employment. I feel like given the circumstance of the last year, companies shouldn't really look at that, because everyone's had to deal with the pandemic in different ways. But gap in paid employment, I'd say even if you've still been doing other stuff during that time, whether it's like voluntary work or whatever you've been up to, I don't think you should have to. I feel like you shouldn't have to justify if you've got a gap in your employment, because everyone has different lives and different things that they've had to deal with. So it shouldn't affect it. If you've got the right experience, you've got other experience, or you're able to prove yourself that you're willing to learn, and you're just the right person for the job. Sometimes it's not about experience. Sometimes it's about that you are the right person for the company, and that you're willing to work, and you can prove that. It shouldn't necessarily come down to it. And I think if someone judges you based on that, then it's not a company that you want to work for, to be honest with you.
Definitely. And what advice would you give for interviews for jobs in the sector?
Ooh, I'd definitely say they'll often ask for examples of, like, tell me about a time when, So thinking of examples of anything that you've done, and whether it's via work experience or through university or through something you've done voluntary, like use it. And even if you've got job experience, isn't necessarily directly events. So say it's like admin or customer service, like working in a bar, like those skills can directly relate to an events job role. So just spending some time to kind of think about how you think that could relate and explain that to them would be like a good thing to do. If you've got if you do have events that you've done, you've got evidence kind of it, creating like an online portfolio, whether it's just on a website or on like social media. In some ways, it doesn't have to be publicly available. You can keep it like locked, but sometimes that's quite good to showcase like your work and just like stand out a bit more from just a generalized CV before you get into an interview. And then just show like passion about the wider industry. So anything you've done about events that's not directly job related. So if you're part of a network, or if you're I don't know, part of a mentoring scheme or anything like that, anything that could relate to how like you've learned in the event industry and that you've got contacts, like speak about those, bring that information up, and research the company, of course, that you're actually interviewing with and what kind of events they do, so you've got a general idea of it and how your experience could help add to like the events they do, or if there's a gap that you think that they could do an event like this but it doesn't seem to be doing that, like highlight it in an interview, because that shows that you're like being proactive and thinking about how you can fit into that company and make their life easier, because that's why people hire, either to make money or make time easier. It's like free up time and money. So if you can prove either of those in an interview, that's when you're onto a winner.
And just leading on to that, is there anything that you'd want to see, essential on a CV, or to bring up in an interview? Is there any sort of things that would really stand out, from anybody else?
One, I think a well formatted CV for a start. So having it formatted nice and clear and easy to read, because when you're looking at multiple CVs, it is like the first glance will jump out at you. And then kind of relating the CV to the job advert. I think this is like been preached at by lots of people. But if you're able to see on the CV that it matches the job description that you put out, you feel like they're better aligned to it. And always put a cover letter just to kind of just give some more information about yourself, because your CV is like what you've done. I feel like your cover letter could be like, what can you do for that company? And then in an interview, I really think it's most important to be yourself, because when I've helped hire in the past, it's about finding the right person for the team, because sometimes you have like really close teams, close fits, and you might be one person that's like really good fit on paper, but actually when they come in, they're not quite like aligned with their personality, and you don't want to disrupt harmony in a team if you've got it, because it's so hard to come by. So really being yourself, let your personality shine through, and to show your eagerness and willingness to get stuck in, because at events at the end of the day, like you need to help people out all the time and be willing to like roll your sleeves up and pack bags or badges for hours on end after work if you need to for the next day.
Oh, I miss those days. And someone's just asked about a CV. We all get told different things about our CV. If it should be 1 pages, 2 pages. So, do you think what should it be like? For the events industry, should it be 1 page, 2 page? You got any advice on that?
Well, definitely no more than 2 pages. I'd say 2 pages is absolutely fine. I think it depends on what experience you've got, like how much you've got to show. I mean, Clem knows, we've gone through her CV when she was applying, and she had a lot of experience. So trying to narrow it down, like there's no way you could have a 1-page CV. But like it's all experience that's valid and like applies to the job. So you want to highlight that. If you do need to like cut it down, you can like, instead of older job roles, instead of putting what you've done, just have the job role on there, like the job title and the time. like that you worked there, because it's not, if it doesn't directly relate to the job description, it's not necessarily needed. Like you might just want to highlight that you did work during those times, but you don't need to have any information unless it's directly related to it. But yeah, 2 pages is definitely fine. If you've got 1 page and it's still concise and you can get your everything that you want to get across in 1 page, then by all means 1 page is also good.
Lovely. And just out of interest, what's been your favourite event that you've ever worked on?
The awards, the Investors in People awards that I did. I think because it was like a bigger event, I project managed it from like start to finish, and I managed it all. It's like Las Vegas themed, and we'd redesigned it from the year before, so like everything we kind of like updated and changed and got more out of. And it was just like there's loads of people, we got more people there, and everyone just seemed to have a great time. And we got really good feedback on it as well. So that was definitely my favourite. I like working on like the big projects, kind of like piecing it all together. And because it linked in with like the marketing as well, so I was doing like email marketing, social media, like website design and stuff, I was like involved in all of it. So it's bigger than just like event operations, which like I really enjoyed.
Lovely stuff. And what's been the favourite event that you've ever attended?
Who attended? Um, oh, you've stumped me there. Event I've attended. I feel like a lot of them are like concerts, but that's not necessarily because of the event, it's just because of that the music. Like seeing Beyonce, that was obviously that's going to be up there. Event I've attended. I don't actually know, you know. It's actually a really tricky one. I'll have to get back to you on that one. I don't actually know what my favourite event is. My mind's gone blank.
And what about the future of the industry? What do you think, with all your experience, with all your knowledge, do you think, it's going to be hybrid, virtual? What do you think?
Short term, still virtual for now, especially in corporate, because with corporate it's big brands, so we're like the least likely to take risks because your brand name is at risk, not just the people attending. So like if you had an outbreak of COVID because of your event, like you're going to get in the headlines, especially at the moment. So no one wants to be that person. No one wants to like take the risk effectively, and you don't need, most companies don't need to, because they've been able to do it virtually. So I think it'd be good to see the festivals and all of that starts this summer. Like it's going to be the music industry and festival industry that drive the return to live events for sure, and corporate will just be like slowly up the back, like following, seeing what happens in there. Smaller events maybe in person, but I think it will be hybrid. But the trouble with hybrid is it's like an extra layer that you've got to plan. So it's not just planning one event, it's planning 2 separate events, but making sure they kind of like work in tandem. So it's extra work, and it's like, is it worth the budget? Is it worth the like resources to actually do a hybrid event? For some companies it will, for some it won't. I know some companies are just like, no, we'll just wait till we go back to in person, we'll stick with virtual for now. I think you saw this like last year, the turn to start doing virtual was quite slow. Like on the uptake with corporate, lots of them thought, you know what, we'll be fine by September, we'll just hold off doing anything virtual because we'll be able to just go straight back to in person. And then they realized that wasn't going to happen, so they've gone to virtual now, and I feel like a lot of teams are comfortable with it. But there is still the demand there to go back to in person. I just think we won't see a proper return to it till next year. This year I think is very much going to remain virtual, in the corporate world. Maybe the odd event at the end of the year, like internal events, maybe testing it, but definitely smaller. I will be intrigued to see how it all pans out, but I definitely think 2022 for it starting to get back to normal, and 2023 for a proper, like we're back to the same like amount of in-person events that we had pre-pandemic.
Definitely. Oh, I cannot wait.
Yeah.
Cannot wait to be back in person. Oh, we've got one more question that's just come up. So when do you see your company starting to plan the in-person events? Good question.
I mean, we talk about it all the time, but there's no clear decision yet because we're not even back at the office. So until we're back at the office, we're definitely not going to be going back to in person because until they say it's safe for you to be in the office, well, it can't be safe for you to work on an event. So I don't actually know when we're going back to in person. It's good to kind of think about different ideas and things we could do when it goes back to in person. But for now, the company I work for are really hot on it being virtual. Like they have it down, do loads of virtual events, and they did before the pandemic even started. So it's very comfortable to run those. I mean, people ask, and like they want, if we could do it, I'm sure we would do it as soon as possible. But it's just the safety aspect, I think. So I think it will be a while yet. I feel like, I don't know, I can't really speculate because I don't know when it's going to be. I wish I knew, and I can't wait till I can do in-person events again for sure.
Oh, definitely, absolutely. Well, I think if anyone else has got any more questions, do feel free to unmute yourself or pop them in the chat box. And if not, then, oh, someone unmuting. No, I think that might be everyone. Well, yeah, feel free to post any more, and if there is some that come up, then we can ask Rachel. We can, if they come after, then we can get her to tell her. You know what I mean? Tell us the answer after this session is over. So yes, thank you so much, Rachel. It's been so great to chat to you about all your experiences, and yeah, giving advice and your experiences about the industry and working in corporate. So thank you so much.
No problem. I mean, it's just stuff that I'd love to have learned myself, like when I was in all of your shoes. So being able to like hear it from someone, I feel like it's good to give back and share the knowledge of everything I picked up along the way. So yeah, get networking, get meeting people, put yourself out there. You never know what opportunities might come your way.
Love that. Thank you so much, and thank you all for attending. We've got a. Oh no, we've got a clap. It's not a hand up. It's a clap. Thank you so much for all attending as well. And next week we have got Caitlin talking all things event marketing. So come along to that as well. Thank you so much, Rachel, again, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, Clem.